Good evening. It's nice to be with you again to celebrate during the season of Easter life. Sometimes it's just the sheer facticity, the sheer givenness of life that is worth celebrating. In fact, that is always the case. Easter reminds us that life is a rhythm of renewal. Renewal in the midst of loss, renewal in the midst of death. A renewal that is a gift that comes from trust. Trust that renewal is possible. Trust that renewal is real. Trust that renewal happens. Part of experiencing renewal, an integral part, is the courage to appreciate its presence. Particularly when times are difficult, when there is loss, when there is suffering and death, when there is unknown. In these past weeks, we've been exploring a poem, What is Courage? And we will continue our exploration of that poem this evening. So I invite you to settle in. Take a couple breaths. Breaths that travel down deep into your belly and also fill your heart, that settle you into this moment. Breaths that invite your autonomic nervous system to relax. Breaths that invite your being to trust that it is okay to release its guard. We gather this evening in prayer and thanksgiving. Entrusting our hearts, minds, and bodies to the Beloved, who lives and breathes and has being as us. And so each gathering is Eucharist for us. It's Thanksgiving. What else can it be? Even with loss. If you have the evening prayer for Easter that I sent out, you can read along the responses, pray them in this liturgy. If you don't have them, when I pause after my part of the liturgy, just simply let the words wash over you as those who do have the words offer their response. So that in your time of silence, you are simply settling further in the presence of a spirit. So let us begin our prayer at evening, this season of Easter. May the gathering dusk become the luminous light of darkness, cradling and guarding and guiding your soul through this night. Let us pray together. Holy breath, sweet spirit of life, your shadow embraces the deep and life is born. Your voice caresses the earth and life arises. Your light illumines the heavens and life's journey unfolds. May our breath be nothing but your presence, calling our hearts to rest without reserve, like the setting starlit sun upon the sea. As you. Amen. And this evening we have Psalm 27 taken from the writings of Nan Merrill. Let us together raise our voice as we say this psalm together. Love is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Love is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When fears assail me, rising up to accuse me, each one in turn shall be seen in love's light. Though a multitude of demons rise up within me, my heart shall not fear. Though doubts and guilt do battle, yet shall I remain confident. One thing have I asked of love, that I shall ever seek, that I might dwell in the heart of love all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of my beloved, and to know love's plan. It's a beautiful setting for that song. What is courage? So that's the poem I've been reflecting upon with you. And the first verse of that poem is, when fear would shut us down cold, courage is breathing. Breathing. That breath is always there. Tens of thousands of times a day, and most times we're not aware of the breath. And taking in a conscious, aware breath can change everything. Everything. As it loosens the cogs and the gears of our often mechanistic life. The verse I would like to reflect on with you this evening is this. When casting aspersion would seem to satiate that compulsion to judge, courage is appreciating. Compulsion to judge. And it leads me to be curious about where the judgment comes from. And it comes to us from those caregivers, those primary caregivers in our life that, for the most part, meaning quite good. And in part, their judgments are quite necessary. This judge, this compulsion to judge, this need to judge, this exercise of judgment that we exercise so often, well, it comes from them. They teach us to judge when it's safe to cross the street. You don't cross the street when there's traffic. Or literally teach us to be able to make the judgment you don't pick up a hot pan. They command us, they tell us, don't pick up a hot pan without a pan. Don't play with sharp objects, juggling them around. And so over time, we hear those judgments cast our way over and over again. And over time, we internalize that voice of judgment that comes from our caregiver, mother, father, grandparent, uncle, aunt, older sibling. So that in time, with time, their voice is within us. Even when they're not around, we hear the voice and we come to believe it's our own voice, this inner judge, this inner critic. And it's not only about crossing the street, touching hot things. It's a voice that tells us we are too slow, or too heavy, or too dumb. We get in the way. We're too loud. We're too quiet. We're not fun to be with. So many judgments that have to do with who we are, that have to do with our value, our beauty, our goodness. Our understanding of what our basic nature is. And we come to believe, and it's not conscious, but the voices of judgment wash over us so often, and they become ours. We can't distinguish that voice in our head from our true perception. It's a voice that diminishes us, that takes this vast land of our soul that has no boundaries, that has no borders, that has no divisions, and it cuts it up. It slices it up. It puts walls in there, and it makes rooms in there. Some rooms in which we hide, some rooms in which we take refuge. But we construct this edifice of the land of our soul, out of the land of our soul, in which we are constantly bumping up against judgments and trying to avoid those bumps because they bruise us. They batter us, they bruise us, they belittle us. We become persons who judge ourselves of very little worth. Haunted by a voice that's within us and we can't get rid of. That's the judgment I'm talking about. We feel compelled to judge ourselves as not measuring up, as of little value, of diminished beauty, not worth acknowledging, not worth beholding, as simply glorious as we are. What happens is that we no longer are able to appreciate ourselves, to appreciate who we are as we are without any qualification. And the judgment that we have of ourselves, so we feel compelled to cast it about the world. So take a breath. What breathing begins to do is, as I said, give us a little space to dislodge the gears and the teeth, whose teeth are judgment, and lock us into a very small space and place in the land of our soul. So what is courage? Courage is taking those breaths, because as we judge, we stop breathing. With each judgment, there is a constriction in our body, in our heart, and we withdraw. And so the breath is itself an act of courage, a daring act of courage for us. It gives a little space, a little capacity to be with ourselves. And what I invite you to do with that breath is a practice for a week or two, a month. That as you take a breath and then exhale that breath, to do it with an appreciation for who you are, for all that you have endured, from your own judgments, to be kind to yourself. We judged as little beings because that's how we survive. But those judgments now, they cripple us. And then we can judge our judging. What I'm asking you to do, inviting you to do, is breathe appreciation into your heart and body and soul. Nothing less and nothing more. A kind breath of appreciation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 breaths a day. That simply appreciate your beauty, your goodness, your value. That's courageous. And if the judgment comes in, acknowledge it, and simply go back to your breath of appreciation. And see where that leads in this moment. How you feel, how you carry yourself. A breath of appreciation for your beauty. That has no qualification. That is resurrection. Amen. Let us continue with the prayer of Jesus from the Aramaic. The beloved is with you. Let us pray. O breath of life, your name shines everywhere. Release a space to show your presence here. Holy is your I am now. Embody your desire in every light and form. Bring to us this moment's bread and wisdom. Untie the knots of failure binding us as we release our judgment against others. Help us to remember our source, yet free us to be reborn in every moment. From you comes forth every vision, power, and song, from gathering to gathering. Amen. Being present here and now in holy mystery, with grateful hearts we lay our sorrows, cares, and joys before the beloved, as we say together, love before me, love behind me, love above me, love beneath me. I on your path, O love. You, O love, on my way. In the twisting of the road, in the currents of the river, be with me by day, be with me by night. Be with me by day and by night. And so I pray, keep watch, dear Lord, with those who work or watch or weep this night, and give your angels charge over those who sleep. Tend the sick, Lord Christ. Give rest to the weary. Bless the dying, soothe the suffering, pity the afflicted, shield the joyous, and all for your love's sake. Amen. May this be a sweet evening for you. Good night.